Do you think that this I do not mean this as a knock at all if it comes across as a knock, but
Okay.
are you glad that you found success later in life? And I ask that because I feel like this is all these questions come from my selfish, need for whatever. I hold on to the hope of like Ray Romano and Tim Allen, but even Tim Allen, I think I'm older than Tim Allen now. But Ray Romano got his sitcom when he was like 50 or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got time.
Yeah.
And I think we're similar age, and you got Resident Alien. Actually, pretty young if it was 7 years ago, I guess. But,
Right.
But later in the mid-30s, I guess.
I'm still 18. What do you mean, Mike?
You were born after 9/11. But are you glad you found it a little later and not fresh out of college?
No,
or whatever?
yeah, no. If I had found it fresh out of college, I would be a different person. I probably would be like somewhere else entirely. I don't even know if I would still be in the business because I would have lost myself. I needed time to like figure out who I was, what I stood for, and then I needed to be able to land my first big role as something that really I resonated with on a emotional, energetic level. And I wouldn't have had that in my 20s. I just wouldn't have. But at the same time, I don't know if I willed this or manifested it for myself, but I went into the whole Hollywood of it all knowing it was going to take a long time. Like I went in being like, I showed up to LA in 2007 and I would like regularly look at celebrities that I liked or, admired. And I would look at the moment on their IMDb that they like kind of got on the map.
Yeah.
And then how long it took them to like get on the map.
Right.
And for almost every single one of them, it was 10 years.
10 years between the first and the first gig and really interesting.
Before they really were like kind of known.
Yeah.
And even then it was like how many more years before they were like in Game of Thrones or like in whatever's the hot thing right now, right? Like it's, or that they're really a household name. Like if you think about Emma Stone, right? Like she started with Easy A and it took her 10 years just to get to a place where people were like, I know Emma Stone. I know that name. Now, what is it? 5 to 10 years later, she's just now getting Oscar recognition. Right. And it's not to say like, oh, poor Emma Stone. It's like she's, you know what I mean?
Slog,
though? It's right. I think people, I say it because I think people think when you get here, it's just going to happen overnight. And I remember when I first moved here, so many people like moving away after 3 years. Like 5 years was their max. Ugh. If they didn't have a certain amount of time. And I just was like, no. It's like lifelong. This is the career. And I'm like, if I have to Glenn Close it and, find something later on in my life, or Morgan Freeman, which he was like 45 or something when he did Shawshank. And
interesting.
Yeah. But you think Morgan's been around a long time, but when you look back, like he really, and he probably has. He was probably doing all kinds of stuff in his 20s and 30s we don't know anything about. But he wasn't on screen. We didn't know him as Morgan Freeman until later in his life. So I'm all about it. I'm like, the more I can have that longevity going into my later years, the more my career will be fulfilling for my whole life.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it started now because I have like a good foundation.
Foundation of not working and knowing what those lows are like.
Yeah, right. Right.
And patience.
Yeah.
And
but still having
things
that.
to hand it to you. Yeah.
Still having those moments where you're like, I'm older now. Do I really want to do this grind? Do I really want to be in this? Do I really want to be fighting for who I am? Like, or for what I stand for, or,
Yeah.
It's still like, as much as I have success with this show, people still don't know who I am. They still don't know my work unless they know the show. And even then they don't know me. That's just one show.
Right.
Like I still have a long way to go. It's probably going to be another 10, 15 years for me before I'm really in. And again, not putting any bad juju on myself. Maybe not. Maybe it's only 2 years from now where I get some really big booking, but like, it's still a grind.
Yeah.
And
I feel like the Box Angeles bump doing my podcast, after about 5 years, you do my podcast, you pop off.
Yes. Okay.
I had like
thanks.
Glenn Powell on like
Mike.
5 years ago. I had Monica Barbaro on like 5 years ago. And Yeah, and then they popped off. So
Thank you.
I gave you a little boost.
Hey, I like it. Thanks. I get the mic boost. Thank you so much.
Wait,
I'll remember you and I'll thank you when I get my
send
Oscar
the elevator
speech.
back down.
Okay, I will. The golden elevator.
I need is a co-star at this point. I'd love to ask you about, like, you mentioned you hadn't been a series regular before Resident Alien. You had a couple recurrings, I think, right?
Yeah.
But like, what was your audition like? Was there did you see a steady growth in what you were auditioning for, or was the series regular random that you got for this, or were you regularly auditioning for series regulars? How, like, for me, I've had like 2 guest star auditions, but a ton of co-stars, and I haven't booked shit. But like, was it a natural progression for you, or was?
I remember there was like a solid 5-year grind with the pilot season stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was like the moment I understood I need to be a brand, I need to have a website, back when websites were a thing. Like it became this like, I need to like know what I'm going out for, go to certain showcases with agencies, like try to like, get to know casting. Like I was sending out like headshots, resumes still when that was also still a thing, like 10 years, ago or whatever. But like it got to a place where I did audition for co-stars. I auditioned for guest stars. It was sort of like I could see there was a little bit of a shift. Once I booked one thing, then I could sort of see a shift in like what I was now being given the opportunity to get into. But I had a series regular audition that I got close to getting, I don't know, 2 or 3 years prior to Resident Alien. And it's a blessing I didn't get it. I don't want to shit on the show, so I won't mention it. But it was something that would have been monetarily longer and more beneficial. But I actually went on that show later and saw some of the people working on it, and I could tell it was not fulfilling them in their soul. And I was like, I'm glad I dodged that bullet. I think like we got to be careful what we wish for here. It's one thing to be like, I want to book a series regular, but what kind, how long?
How do you fit in?
How do you fit in? How do you have a voice? Like, because just because you get that and you get that paycheck doesn't mean that that's been the craziest part. So not to go too far off of what you asked, but I did see a shift once I would book one thing.